Tom had never imagined that one day he would stand inside a hall larger than any building on Earth. The council chamber was not built by human hands. It stretched so wide that he could not see the end of its curved ceiling. Lights floated high above like stars trapped inside glass, glowing in colors his eyes could barely understand. Strange designs covered the walls, patterns that seemed to shift as if they were alive. Every seat was shaped for different bodies, some tall and long like reeds, others wide and heavy like stones, and a few made for creatures that seemed to float rather than sit. He stood near the entrance, clutching the small tablet given to him by Earth's delegation. He was not a soldier or a great leader. He was chosen because of his ability to listen and to speak clearly when needed. Humanity had joined the wider galaxy only recently, and most other races saw humans as newcomers, fragile and untested. That was why he was nervous. He was not only Tom from Earth, he carried the weight of his entire world. The chamber was already full. Hundreds of alien leaders had taken their places. Some looked humanoid, with faces and arms that reminded him of people back home. Others looked nothing like anything on Earth. One being was covered in crystal plates that clicked each time it moved. Another looked like a cloud of silver mist contained within a glowing shell. Each one radiated authority and power. Tom tried to find a seat, but none seemed meant for him. Human chairs were small compared to the massive thrones and structures around the hall. He walked slowly, feeling the eyes of countless beings follow him. Whispers rose among them, soft but sharp. Human. Too small. Why send him? He heard fragments in translated voices. His throat tightened. He remembered the warnings given to him before the council session. Do not show fear. Stand with dignity. Speak when it matters. Yet at that moment, he only felt lost. At the center of the chamber was a long row of seats raised higher than the rest. There sat the most important rulers of the galaxy. Among them was the alien queen. She was unlike anyone else. Her figure was tall and graceful, dressed in flowing robes that shimmered with faint light as if woven from the night sky. A crown rested on her head, shaped from metal that glowed blue at its edges. Her eyes were deep and calm, reflecting more years than Tom could imagine. Every being in the chamber respected her, even those who argued with her. She ruled not through fear but through wisdom and presence. Tom had read about her before leaving Earth. She had ended wars between ancient rivals and guided younger races into peace. Some called her a living legend. Seeing her in person was overwhelming. He lowered his gaze and tried to look for any empty place away from the center. But there was none. Every seat was taken by powerful figures, every space filled. His heart raced. If he remained standing, it would look as if humans were not even worthy of a place at the council. He shifted his weight and held the tablet tighter. His palms felt damp. The whispers grew louder. He could almost feel the doubt spreading across the chamber. He wondered if this was how humanity's first true step into the galaxy would end in embarrassment. Then, a voice rose above the whispers. It was calm, strong, and impossible to ignore. Come here. Tom lifted his head. The alien queen was looking directly at him. Her eyes did not judge. They invited. He froze. Was she truly speaking to him? She extended her hand slightly, not as a command but as an offer. When Tom still hesitated, she rose from her seat. The entire chamber fell silent. Every leader, every alien, turned to watch. She stepped closer, her robes brushing against the glowing floor. Her presence filled the air like a warm current. She reached out and gently took Tom's arm. Her touch was steady, neither forceful nor delicate. "Sit next to me," she said. The words echoed across the chamber, translated for all to hear. Tom's breath caught. He glanced around, seeing expressions of shock, disbelief, and even anger on the faces of other rulers. Yet no one dared to speak against her. She was the queen, and her word carried the weight of centuries. With careful steps, she guided him toward the central throne beside her own. The seat shimmered and reshaped itself, adjusting to his form. It was as if the hall itself obeyed her command. Tom sat down slowly. His heart pounded in his chest, but he kept his posture straight. He felt the eyes of the galaxy still on him, yet now their whispers were softer, uncertain. The queen returned to her throne. She gave him a brief nod, as if telling him he belonged there. For the first time since entering the chamber, Tom felt a spark of confidence. The council began. Strange voices filled the air as leaders discussed trade routes, borders, and ancient disputes. Words were translated into his ear through the small device provided by Earth. Some matters he understood, others were far beyond his knowledge. Yet he listened closely, noting every detail. Even as the discussion continued, he kept wondering why the queen had chosen him. She could have ignored him like the rest. She could have left him standing, but instead she had given him a place at her side. Perhaps she saw something in him that he did not yet see in himself. As the first session continued, Tom remained silent, absorbing the atmosphere of the great hall. He noticed how some leaders leaned forward with suspicion each time the queen glanced his way. Others ignored him, as if hoping he would vanish. A few studied him with curiosity, maybe wondering if humans could truly matter among the stars. When a pause finally came in the debate, the queen spoke again. Her voice was calm but firm, commanding attention without effort. "Every race began small," she said. "Every voice seemed weak before it grew strong. Humanity is young, but youth does not mean silence." Her words were directed to the council, but Tom felt them pierce his heart. He realized she was giving him not only a seat but also a chance to prove himself. The session ended hours later. Leaders rose, their bodies moving in ways Tom had never seen before, wings folding, limbs stretching, shells opening. The chamber buzzed with conversation, yet every path Tom tried to imagine for himself seemed uncertain. He remained seated, unsure of what to do. The queen stood and turned to him. "You did well," she said softly. "You listened. Few have the patience to listen before they speak." Tom nodded, not trusting his voice. She gave him a small smile, one that seemed to hold both kindness and knowledge. "Tomorrow, you will speak." His eyes widened, but before he could respond, she moved away, surrounded by her attendants. Her robes shimmered as she disappeared into the corridors of the chamber. Tom sat in silence for a long time, the seat still warm from her presence. His thoughts spun. Tomorrow he would speak not just as Tom, but as the voice of Earth. He looked up at the lights above, glowing like distant stars. For the first time since arriving, he felt that maybe humanity did have a place here, in this hall among giants. And maybe, just maybe, he could help earn it. Tom arrived early the next day, guided by attendants of the Queen. The hall looked even larger now that he was no longer overwhelmed by the first shock. The glowing ceiling shone brighter, casting silver light on the curved walls. The seats were filled one by one as rulers and envoys entered, each carrying the pride of their worlds. Tom walked carefully. He remembered how lost he had felt the day before, searching for a seat while whispers surrounded him. But this morning, he knew exactly where to go. His place was beside the alien queen. When he reached the center row, the seat beside hers shifted and reshaped again, adjusting for his human form. He sat down with steady movements, determined not to look nervous. The queen turned her head slightly and gave him the faintest nod, an acknowledgement that he belonged. The council chamber slowly fell silent as the session began. Voices that sounded like drums, bells, whistles, and rushing wind merged into one through the translation system. The great leaders introduced matters of trade, resource sharing, and territorial disputes. At first, Tom listened without a word, just as he had done before. He noticed how the conversations moved like currents in a river. Some leaders spoke with sharp, fast words, pressing their advantage. Others spoke slowly, as if every phrase was heavy with meaning. And many ignored smaller voices, speaking over them as though they were invisible. The Queen's voice was different. Calm, steady, and balanced, it cut through the noise like a gentle wave that could not be stopped. Whenever she spoke, the chamber stilled. But Tom felt the weight of eyes again. Not all were pleased with his presence. Across the hall, he noticed a tall figure with skin like molten metal, glowing faintly with orange heat. This was Lord Creel of the Xandrians, known for his disdain toward young civilizations. His gaze fixed on Tom, burning with disapproval. "Why does humanity sit among us?" Creel said suddenly, his voice ringing like iron struck by a hammer. "A race that has barely touched the stars should not hold a place at the Queen's side." The words were direct, loud, and meant to humiliate. A wave of murmurs spread through the chamber. Tom felt his chest tighten. He had expected whispers, but not open challenge. Before he could even think of an answer, the Queen raised her hand. "Every race began as new," she replied. "Even the Xandrians once walked uncertain paths before finding their strength." Creel gave a sharp laugh, the sound echoing like breaking stone. "Yes, but we earned our seat. What has humanity done? They crawl out of their cradle and believe they can guide stars." Tom swallowed. He wanted to vanish, but he could feel the Queen's presence beside him, steady like a pillar. Then he remembered her words from yesterday, "Tomorrow, you will speak." His heart pounded. He knew he could not remain silent. He leaned forward, his voice soft at first, but clear. "Humanity may be young, but we learn fast. We may not have great fleets or ancient palaces, but we know how to survive, how to adapt, and how to endure." Some heads turned. The translator carried his words across the chamber. Tom continued, his confidence growing as he spoke. "On Earth, we face storms, droughts, and harsh winters. We crossed oceans without knowing what was on the other side. We cured sickness that once destroyed millions. We stepped on our moon before many thought it possible. We have always found ways to rise after falling." Silence spread for a moment. The chamber, so often filled with noise, was quiet as leaders considered his words. The Queen's eyes shone with approval. "This is why humanity is here," she said, her voice carrying across the hall. "Not because they are strong in number or ancient in years, but because their spirit is unbroken." Creel frowned, his molten glow dimming slightly. "Stories," he muttered. "Every race has stories." Tom looked at him, steady now. "Yes. And stories are proof we have lived, struggled, and survived. They remind us who we are. Without them, strength means nothing." The Queen rested her hand gently on the armrest between them, a silent sign of support. Creel did not reply, though his glare lingered. The council moved forward, shifting to matters of trade. Different leaders argued about resources: water from one system, energy crystals from another. Tom listened, fascinated. Some races demanded much and offered little. Others tried to balance fairness but were silenced by stronger voices. When a smaller race called the Nelleri spoke, their high-pitched voices trembled. They asked for protection of their transport routes, often raided by pirates. Larger empires brushed them aside. They should defend themselves, one lord said. They are too weak to matter, another added. Tom frowned. He remembered how his own ancestors on Earth had once been small tribes, struggling against stronger neighbors. Without cooperation, they would never have survived. He leaned forward again. Every race here was small once, he said. If the Nelleri cannot trade safely, then they cannot grow. If they cannot grow, then they will never contribute. Helping them now means they can help all of us later. The Nelleri envoy turned toward him, eyes wide with surprise. Few had defended them before. The Queen's voice followed his. The human is correct. Unity is not built by casting aside the weak, but by lifting them until they can stand beside us. Some murmurs of agreement spread. Others grumbled, but the Nelleri envoy bowed deeply in thanks. Tom felt a spark of pride. Twice now he had spoken, and twice his words had carried weight. He realized something important: he was not just a guest anymore. He was part of the council. The debates continued for hours. Borders of star systems, agreements of technology exchange, even cultural disputes between ancient rivals. Tom did not speak often, but when he did, he chose his words carefully. And each time, the Queen gave him space to be heard. As the session neared its end, Creel rose again. His molten body glowed brighter, anger flickering through him. Do not be fooled, he said. One voice does not change what humanity is. Weak. Young. Unprepared. He turned directly to Tom. If you wish to prove otherwise, then face a challenge. Speak not of Earth, but of the galaxy. What will your people give that others cannot? The hall grew silent again. All eyes fell on Tom. His hands trembled for a moment. What could humanity give? They had no vast fleets, no ancient wisdom, no technology to rival the greatest empires. He thought of the small blue planet he came from, fragile yet stubborn. Then the answer came to him. He rose from his seat, his voice firm. We may not be the strongest. We may not be the oldest. But humanity gives courage. We step where others fear. We try when others hesitate. And even if we fall, we rise again. That is what we bring to the galaxy: courage to face the unknown. For a long moment, silence held the chamber. Then, slowly, voices rose, not in scorn, but in thoughtful murmurs. Some nodded. Some looked at him with new respect. The Queen's smile was small but filled with pride. Well spoken, she said. Creel gave no answer. His glow dimmed as he sat back down, his challenge unanswered, not by force, but by truth. The council adjourned soon after. Leaders left in groups, whispering among themselves. Tom sat quietly, letting his breath return to normal. His heart still pounded, but he felt lighter than before. The Queen stood and looked down at him. You found your voice, she said. Tom rose to his feet. I was afraid. All voices tremble the first time, she replied. What matters is that you spoke. Tomorrow, the council will test us again. You must be ready. Her words were not heavy with command but filled with trust. She turned and walked with her attendants, leaving Tom once more with his thoughts. He looked up at the ceiling lights, glowing like distant stars. He felt that something had shifted. Humanity was no longer just watching. Humanity was part of the story now. And he was the one telling it. The council chamber was restless the next morning. The voices of many leaders rose in debate even before the session began. The glow above the chamber pulsed brighter, as if the hall itself sensed the tension. Tom entered quietly, his steps steady but his heart beating fast. The previous day, he had spoken more than he thought he ever could. He had stood against Creel, and though the Xandrian lord had not yielded, Tom had not been silenced. That alone was a victory. But today, the weight of expectation was heavier. Every being who had seen him speak now waited to see if he would rise again or if yesterday had been only luck. He walked toward his seat beside the alien queen. The chair adjusted itself once more to fit his human form. He sat with care, keeping his shoulders straight. The queen turned her head slightly, her calm eyes meeting his. "You carry yourself better today," she said softly, her voice meant only for him. "I am still afraid," Tom admitted. She gave a small smile. "Fear is natural. Courage is speaking even when fear is present." Before Tom could answer, the chamber grew quiet as the session was called to order. The discussions began with disputes between two powerful empires over mining rights in a cluster of stars. Their voices clashed like storms, each claiming history and ownership. Others joined in, some supporting one side, others the opposite. Tom listened, noting how quickly reason was buried beneath pride. The queen raised her voice only once during that debate. "Resources must be shared, or war will consume us all." Her words slowed the argument, though it did not end. Then, as the discussion shifted, Creel rose. His molten body glowed with sharp light, his voice ringing through the hall. "I grow tired of stories and words," Creel declared. "Let the human prove his worth if he dares. Let him show that humanity has more than courage in tales." Murmurs spread quickly. Many leaders leaned forward with interest. Challenges in the council were not rare, but to direct one at a new race was bold. The queen's gaze hardened. "Creel, you know this council is not for spectacle." But Creel's glow brightened. "Then let it be for truth. If humanity claims a place here, let them face the judgment of words. Let the human stand before us and defend his race, not in whispers beside you, but in open speech." The chamber rumbled with agreement. Some wanted to see Tom fail. Others were curious. Few truly believed a human could rise to such a test. Tom felt the weight of hundreds of eyes upon him. His mouth went dry. Yesterday, he had spoken because he had no choice. Today, he was being forced into the open. The queen leaned closer. Her voice was calm, steady. "You are not alone. Speak what is true. Nothing more is needed." Tom rose slowly. His legs felt heavy, but he forced them to move. He stepped into the center of the chamber. The light above shifted, shining down upon him as if marking him for judgment. For a long moment, he said nothing. The silence grew deep, filled with expectation. He looked around at the faces of countless beings, each different yet united by their doubt. Finally, he spoke. "Humanity is not the strongest race here. We are not the oldest. We are not the most advanced. But we are here. That is proof of who we are." The words carried clearly, the translator sending his voice into every ear. He continued, "Stronger now. On Earth, for thousands of years, we lived with danger. Storms destroyed our homes, yet we rebuilt. Hunger struck our people, yet we found new ways to grow food. Diseases swept across our world, yet we fought and cured them. We have fallen again and again, but always, we stood up. That is our strength. Some leaders shifted in their seats. Their eyes, once filled with scorn, now showed thought. Tom turned toward Creel. You say we are weak because we are new. But strength is not only in age or power. Strength is in how many times you rise after falling. And humanity rises. Creel laughed, the sound harsh. Words again. Do you have nothing but stories of your small world? Tom's voice grew sharper. Stories are the memory of survival. Without them, power is empty. Our stories remind us we have endured, and they tell us we will endure again. That is why they matter. The chamber quieted. Tom felt their eyes still on him, but he also felt something shift. His words were not being dismissed. They were being considered. The Queen spoke, her tone calm yet firm. This council is built on memory, on lessons of the past. If stories are worthless, then so is every record we keep. Humanity speaks truth. A being with skin like pale stone and many arms leaned forward. Human, tell us this, what drives your people to keep rising? Why not surrender when the struggle is endless? Tom drew a breath. Because we have hope. Because even in darkness, we believe in a better day. That belief pushes us forward. It gives us courage to face the unknown, even when we are afraid. The stone being nodded slowly, thoughtful. More questions followed. A voice from the mist creature asked, what do humans value most? Tom answered, life. Not just our own, but the lives of those we love. We fight hardest when it is for each other. A voice from the crystalline being asked, what do you fear? Tom replied, we fear being forgotten. We fear leaving nothing behind. That fear drives us to create, to build, to explore. Each answer came not from rehearsed speeches but from his heart. He spoke as a human, plain and true. And the chamber listened. Creel's glow dimmed with each word. His challenge was meant to break Tom, yet it gave him strength. Finally, Tom lifted his head high. Humanity does not claim to be great. We claim to endure, to hope, to rise. And if we are given a place among you, we will not only take, we will give. We will share our courage, our hope, our will to keep moving forward. That is what we offer to the galaxy. The hall was silent once more. Then, slowly, a sound rose. It was not applause, for many races did not use hands. It was a wave of approving signals, chimes, hums, light pulses. Not all joined, but enough that the sound filled the air. The Queen's eyes glowed faintly as she looked at Tom. Pride shone in her expression. Creel's body flickered, his light uneven. You speak well, human, he admitted at last, though his voice was sharp. But words will not stop what is coming. When danger rises, stories will not save you. Tom met his gaze without fear. No. But they will remind us why we fight. And that makes us stronger. The session ended soon after. Tom returned to his seat, his legs trembling but his heart steady. He had faced the challenge, and though he did not know if every leader respected him, he knew they had listened. As the hall emptied, the Queen remained beside him. You stood when others wished you to fall, she said softly. You have done more than prove yourself. You have reminded this council what it means to have a voice. Tom lowered his head, humbled. "I only spoke the truth." "That is enough," she said. He left the chamber later that day with his thoughts alive. The challenge had been fierce, but he had not faltered. He realized something important: he was no longer only representing Earth. He was shaping how the galaxy saw humanity. And deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. Greater trials would come. But he was ready to face them, for he carried not just his own courage but the spirit of all humanity with him. The fourth day of the council began in an uneasy silence. The chamber that usually buzzed with voices and arguments now felt tense, as if the air itself carried a warning. Tom noticed the change the moment he entered. Leaders who normally raised their voices in pride now whispered among themselves. The glowing ceiling above seemed dimmer, its light pulsing in slow, heavy waves. Tom walked to his seat beside the Queen. He tried to stay calm, but the mood of the chamber unsettled him. The Queen sat still, her face calm but her eyes sharp. She too sensed what was coming. When the last of the rulers entered, the session began. But instead of opening with trade disputes or border claims, a tall envoy from the distant edge of the galaxy stepped forward. His skin was dark like stone, and his deep voice carried weight that hushed the chamber. "I bring grave news," he said. "Our outer colonies are gone." The chamber rippled with shock. "Gone?" someone demanded. "Destroyed by whom?" The envoy lowered his head. "Not by whom. By what? An ancient force has awakened. Machines older than our records. They rise from forgotten worlds and devour all life in their path." Whispers turned into shouts. Tom felt the hairs on his arms stand up. Machines. Ancient ones. His translator carried dozens of voices into his ears, all filled with fear and disbelief. The envoy raised his arm, and a projection lit the center of the chamber. Images appeared: worlds covered in black swarms of machines, ships torn apart, cities silenced. Cold, lifeless fields stretched where once there had been life. Tom felt his stomach tighten. These were not random pirates or raiders. This was something different, something far more terrifying. The Queen's voice cut through the uproar. "What proof do you bring?" The envoy shifted, then showed recordings. Fleets firing every weapon they had, yet the machines advanced unharmed. Swarms moved like living storms, covering everything. Even massive defense platforms crumbled under their weight. The chamber grew silent again, but this silence was heavy with fear. Lord Creel rose, his molten body glowing with agitation. "If this is true, then none of us are safe. They will come for all worlds." For once, there was no mockery in his voice. Only grim truth. A leader with shimmering wings spoke, her voice sharp with panic. "We must close our borders, defend our own systems, and leave the weak to fend for themselves." "No," another shouted. "We must strike first, before they spread further." "Strike them. You saw the proof. Weapons fail against them." The council descended into chaos. Voices clashed, fear breaking the thin order that usually held them together. Tom sat frozen for a moment, listening. His mind raced. He thought of Earth, so far away and so unprepared. If these machines reached his home, humanity would not stand a chance. Unless something was done. The Queen leaned slightly toward him, her voice calm but heavy. "Now is when your courage must speak again." Tom's chest tightened. He was only one man, young and inexperienced compared to the rulers around him. But he thought of the stories he had told before. Humanity had survived storms, plagues, wars. And always, survival came from one thing: unity. He rose to his feet. His voice trembled at first, but it cut through the noise. Listen. The chamber stilled. Eyes turned toward him again, some annoyed, some surprised. But they listened. Tom took a deep breath. If we fight each other, we will lose everything. These machines do not care who is strong or weak, old or young. They will destroy us all unless we stand together. Some scoffed. A heavy being with crystal plates clattering said, "Together? We cannot even agree on trade. How can we unite against this?" Tom stood firm. On Earth, we argued. We fought wars that lasted centuries. But when disaster came, when storms or sickness struck, we learned that survival depended on joining hands. If we had not, we would not be here now. You are stronger than us, older than us, but that truth is the same. Alone, you will fall. Together, you can stand. The Nellery envoy, small and fragile, spoke up with a trembling voice. He is right. If they destroyed colonies at the edge, then they will reach us too. We cannot run forever. Others muttered in agreement. But still, many looked uncertain. Fear was a powerful chain, keeping them from trust. The Queen rose then. Her presence silenced all voices. The human speaks with truth. Unity is the only path. I will not close my borders. I will not abandon others. If we must fight, then we fight together. Her words struck like a wave. Some nodded quickly, eager to stand under her leadership. Others remained cautious. Creel's glow flickered as he rose again. You speak of unity, Creel said. But who will lead this war? Who commands when fleets of 100 races sail together? Without order, unity is only chaos. The Queen met his gaze calmly. Then we must choose a council within the council. Leaders who will guide the defense. Murmurs spread. Some resisted the idea. Others began naming themselves. Pride rose again, mixing with fear. Tom listened. He knew pride could ruin everything. If they fought over leadership, they would waste time while the machines advanced. He felt the urgency rising in his chest. He stepped forward once more. Then choose not by pride, but by what each can give. The strongest fleets should stand in the front. The fastest scouts should watch the edges. The wisest should plan strategies. Humanity cannot bring great fleets, but we bring something else: daring. We take risks others fear. Let us share that. If every race brings its strength, and no one claims all, then unity can live. The words struck the chamber. Some leaders turned their heads, considering. For the first time, the idea of shared command seemed possible. The Queen nodded. The human is correct. Unity is not one voice above all. It is many voices working as one. That is how we will survive. Creel was silent for a moment, his molten glow dimming. At last he said, "If this is the path, then I will not turn away. The Xandrians will fight." Other leaders slowly agreed. The Nellery pledged their scouts. The stone-skinned envoy promised ground defenses. Even those who doubted knew the machines would not spare them if they stood alone. By the end of the session, the beginnings of a plan were formed. Fleets would combine, scouts would spread, and resources would be shared. For the first time in many years, the council stood united not for gain, but for survival. When the chamber emptied, Tom remained seated, his heart still racing. He could not believe he had spoken in such a moment, yet he had. And the galaxy had listened. The queen placed a hand on his shoulder. You have done more than you know. Today, unity was born because you reminded us of its power. Tom looked at her, humbled. But what if it is not enough? What if the machines cannot be stopped? The queen's eyes were steady, calm like deep water. Then we fight until there is nothing left. But I believe you are right. Together, we will find a way. Humanity has given us more than courage. You have given us hope. As Tom left the chamber that night, he looked up at the endless stars. Somewhere out there, the machines were moving closer. The galaxy was vast, but now it felt smaller, fragile under the shadow of that threat. Yet within him, he felt something new. He was no longer just a representative of Earth. He was part of something greater. And as fear pressed down on the galaxy, Tom carried one belief that refused to fade. If they stood together, even the darkest storm could be faced. The days after the Council's decision were unlike any the galaxy had seen in centuries. Fleets that had once stared at each other with suspicion now gathered side by side. For the first time, the endless halls of the Grand Station rang not with arguments but with the sound of planning. Maps of stars filled the chamber. Routes were drawn. Supply chains were linked. Every leader sent word home, summoning their people to prepare for the greatest struggle in living memory. Tom moved among them, no longer ignored. Commanders who once scoffed at him now asked questions about his ideas. He spoke of Earth's history, of how humans had turned disaster into victory by daring to act when all seemed lost. His words carried weight because the truth of the machine's destruction hung heavy over all of them. Still, fear remained. Reports came daily of systems falling, of planets reduced to silence. The machines advanced without pause. They spread like a tide that could not be turned. Every world lost made the Council's choice more urgent. The Queen stood as the heart of this new alliance. Her calm presence kept the leaders from breaking apart when disagreements flared. And beside her, Tom became a strange figure of trust. He was small, young, and from a world unknown to most, yet his voice had steadied the Council when fear threatened to consume it. Now came the true test. One evening, the Council gathered to decide where the first stand would be made. The holographic map lit the chamber, showing dozens of possible battle lines. Each had risks. Choose too close to the core, and they would sacrifice outer colonies without a fight. Choose too far out, and they might be crushed before the alliance could gather its full strength. Voices clashed again. Some wanted to protect their nearest systems. Others wanted to strike boldly at the edge. It seemed agreement would slip away once more. Then the Queen turned to Tom. "What do you see?" she asked. Tom stared at the map. His heart pounded. He was no strategist, no commander. But he remembered Earth's history again. He thought of battles where humans had stood at narrow passes, where the land itself had given them an edge. He searched the map, not for strength in numbers, but for position. "There," he said at last, pointing to a star system marked with 3 planets and a ring of dense asteroids. "The machines move like a storm. They cover everything. But if we fight them in open space, they will surround us. Here, the asteroids will break their swarms. The ring will force them into smaller groups. We can fight them piece by piece instead of all at once." The chamber grew quiet. Leaders studied the map. Some frowned. Others nodded slowly. Lord Creel's molten body flickered brighter. "The human thinks like a warrior. He is right. This is where the first stand should be made." Arguments faded. One by one, the rulers agreed. The asteroid ringed system would be their shield. There, unity would be tested. Preparations began at once. Fleets poured into the system. Giant carriers from the crystalline worlds arrived, their hulls shining like stars. Sharp, fast scout ships of the Nellery darted through the ring, mapping every rock and passage. Creel's warships, glowing with molten energy, took their place at the front. Humans had no great fleet to offer, but Tom gave something else. He worked side by side with strategists, reminding them of Earth's lessons. He urged them to share knowledge, to mix fleets so no one race stood alone. At first, commanders resisted. They wanted their ships together, their banners proud. But Tom showed them how mixed formations forced trust, how it prevented betrayal, how it turned many small strengths into one greater whole. Slowly, the fleets blended. Ships of every shape and color moved in patterns they had never flown before. In the great void, a living shield began to take form. Tom spent many nights awake, staring out from the station's windows into the asteroid belt. He felt both pride and fear. Pride, because he had helped bring this unity. Fear, because he knew what was coming. The machines had destroyed colonies without slowing. What if even this plan failed? The Queen often stood beside him in those hours. She never spoke much, but her presence steadied him. She seemed certain, even when doubt filled the air. Tom drew strength from her calm. The day came sooner than they hoped. Scouts reported movement at the edge of the system. The machines were coming. Their numbers were beyond counting. A swarm blacker than night itself flowed into the star's light, filling the dark with endless shapes. Alarms rang through the fleets. Crews rushed to their stations. Weapons charged. Shields glowed. The first stand of unity was about to begin. Tom stood in the command chamber beside the Queen and the council leaders who had chosen to join the fight in person. The chamber shook slightly as defense platforms powered up. Outside, the fleets spread into formation, weaving between asteroids, using them as cover. Remember, the Queen said to them all. Fear divides. Unity gives strength. Hold fast. The machines struck. They poured into the asteroid belt like a river of blades. Swarms of dark constructs darted forward, their forms shifting like smoke and metal combined. They fired beams that cut through stone and steel. Asteroids shattered. Defenses lit the dark with fire. The first clash was chaos. Ships fired, maneuvered, and broke apart swarms. Asteroids spun, scattering debris. Explosions lit the void. The machines pressed forward without fear, without hesitation. But the plan worked. Instead of a single massive wave, the machines were forced into smaller streams. Fleets pounced on them. Mixed groups of ships worked together. A Nellery scout darted in to draw fire, then a Xandrian warship blasted the exposed machines apart. Human-inspired tactics of bait and strike, risk and reward, turned the tide in places where brute force would have failed. Tom watched the battle unfold on the screens. His chest tightened every time a ship was lost, but his heart lifted when he saw unity in action. Ships of 10 different worlds moved as one, protecting each other, filling each other's gaps. It was not perfect, but it was working. Hours passed. The machines pressed harder. More waves poured in. Some ships fell. Entire wings vanished in fire. But the line held. At one point, a massive machine construct, larger than a city, forced its way into the belt. Its claws ripped asteroids apart. Its beams cut through defenses. Panic filled the fleet. Tom's voice rose above the noise. Focus fire. Do not scatter. Strike together. The order spread. Ships of all kinds turned as one. Beams, missiles, and molten blasts struck the giant construct. It resisted, its black shell glowing but unbroken. Then Creel himself led a charge, his flagship ramming close and releasing molten fire at point blank. The giant shuddered, cracked, and finally tore apart in a burst of light. Cheers spread through the fleets. Hope returned. But the machines did not stop. For every swarm destroyed, more appeared. The battle dragged into the long hours of the night. The fleets were weary. Supplies ran low. Fear whispered again. Tom saw it on the faces around him. He felt it in his own heart. Could they last? Could unity truly win? The Queen's voice rose steady and strong. Hold. We are not alone. Every ship that fights beside you is proof of unity. Do not surrender that. Her words carried across the fleets. They held. At last, after endless waves, the machines began to falter. The asteroids, once a trap for the fleets, became a grave for the swarms. Broken constructs drifted like black snow. The last wave struck weakly and fell apart under united fire. The system grew quiet again. The battle was won. Exhaustion filled the chamber. Leaders slumped in relief. Crews across the fleets cheered, their voices carrying through comms. For the first time, the machines had been stopped. Tom stood silent, staring at the screens filled with drifting wrecks. He felt no triumph at first, only disbelief. They had done it. Against a storm that seemed unstoppable, unity had held. The Queen looked at him. This is only the beginning. They will come again. But now the galaxy knows. The machines can be fought. And unity can win. Tom nodded slowly. His voice was soft but firm. Then humanity has found its place. Not in strength of ships or weapons, but in reminding the stars of the power of standing together. The Queen's eyes shone with pride. Yes. That is your gift. And it may be the one that saves us all. The fleets began to repair, to rebuild, to prepare for the next wave. Across the galaxy, word spread fast. For the first time in memory, races who had hated each other now looked at one another as allies. The machines had awakened, but so had something else: hope. Tom gazed out at the endless dark, his heart full. Earth was far away, but he no longer felt alone. Humanity was part of something greater now, and that unity would carry them forward. Whatever storms came, they would face them together.